Good morning. The webinar will start at 9 o'clock. We have roughly 250 attendees registered, and we're giving them time to get online. Well, good morning, everybody, and welcome to this, the first of two mornings of the No Dig live digital sewer rehab 2020 plus webinars. My name is Ian Naismith, and I'm the moderator for the sessions over the 2 days. Now, as you know, the biannual No Dig live exhibition and conference would have been staged this week in Peterborough. And that would have been an opportunity for suppliers and water company staff to mingle. Instead, UKSTT, Westrade, who organise the No Dig events, and the Sewer Rehab Contact Group of water companies that I chair, have collaborated to provide this series of presentations from water companies. During this event, we will be hearing variously from we'll be hearing variously from them about plans for sewer rehab, their current regulatory cycles, perhaps some thoughts on the current pandemic, and also some of the issues and innovations that are of interest to them. Now, each company's session is half an hour, which is going to be roughly 20 minutes of presentation and a remaining 10 minutes or so for questions. Now, you as the audience can post a question to the speaker using the question bot tab on your screen. Now, I as moderator will select questions and ask them to the speakers in the time available. For any questions that cannot be answered, Westrade will get them answered after the event. Now, this event is being recorded. PDFs of the slides will be circulated to the events to you after the event by Westrade, probably next week. There will be a short break, comfort break after the Welsh water presentation and again after the Northern Ireland water presentation. Also, there are hashtags available, No Dig Live hashtag and UKSTT hashtag if you want to report or comment on the event. So that concludes my short introduction. And I now have pleasure in welcoming Rob Kelly from Ganglion Water, who will be giving the first presentation. So over to you, Rob.
Thank you, Ian. That was almost seamless. Ian, if you can hear me, I assume everybody else
can hear you. Yes.
Right. Right, bear with me while I just share my screen. So Westrade and Ian have done a wonderful job here of making this as seamless as possible. I'm really conscious that it comes over to me to do some IT stuff for you, and I could get this entirely wrong. So I'm hoping that what you can now see is a full view of my presentation. You can just see my name. So Ian, if that is what you can see, just give me a yes, please.
Yes, you're fine.
Great. Okay. Yeah, thanks, Ian, for the introduction. So I'm Rob Kelly. I'm the Regional Network Manager for Ganglion Water, and I've been in this role for about 2 months. And prior to that, in M6, I was responsible for Ganglion's capital investment for predominantly water recycling networks, but also a piece of water. So what I want to talk to you about today is, as Ian referred to, was some things that we focused on in AMP6, which absolutely continue into AMP7. Some of the things which we found and some of the work we did to put them right, which was really innovative for us, really quite expensive at the same time, but actually we've taken a hell of a lot of learning out of. And I'll come on to something which is happening right now in Peterborough, and had we not have all been virtual, you'd have seen it. You'd have seen some of the great stuff we're doing. So I really want to share that with you today as well. So I'm going to kick off with how we set our strategy out for AMP6 and the things that we were looking for. So the first one that I put there is find the big ones. So in terms of our large diameter sewers that run into our key water recycling centres, or sewage treatment works as some of you may know them, they were largely unsurveyed because, given the nature of them, the size of them and the flows that are in them, it's a really tough ask. So we decided to invest some money into those trunk sewers to really go and have a look and find out what condition they were in and whether we would need to do any rehab. And that was a really big challenge, which we gave to one of our alliances, Integrated Operational Solutions, IOS. And they delivered us a fantastic program working with some key suppliers, and it was the floating cameras stuff, sonar, radar, and it was all encompassing, and it was great, and it really was great, and it was a pleasure to be part of that one. So the next focus was based on things that we'd seen over AMPs, and some of you will be aware of this stuff, and some of you will be thinking, yeah, we know all about that. And this was concrete sewers downstream from rising mains that had H2S attack. And what we were seeing was a significant amount of collapses on those assets that could both disrupt our customers and end up costing you hundreds of thousands of pounds in some instances, where you found out that swathes and swathes of length were actually eroded away. So it was about trying to get really proactive with some of that stuff. The no dig, probably more the lining piece here of what I was talking about, was spread across our 3 main alliances, which were the @1 Alliance, iOS and IMR Water Recycling. And within there, you'll have everything from the biggest assets we have to the 4-inch sewer in Mrs. Miggin's back garden. So across that whole swathe of alliances and operations, we had a very clear line of sight across who was doing rehab where and where we were putting our bangs for our bucks. And, and for me, that was really, really important to have vision of the entire network and where we would target that type of sewer rehab. And something which really started to come to the fore towards the end of the AMP, probably maybe in year 3 of the AMP, was the tech not tanks approach. So our carbon goals meant that we had to start doing things differently. I mean, we couldn't continue to build massive, great concrete tanks in the ground to prevent flooding. So we looked at, and we've really started to look at what we already have on the network, or the system, if you like, and how the interconnected dependencies that we already have could work better, and how we could monitor things differently. So the tech not tanks, in inverted commas, really did take off around the business, and it's something which we're still talking about now as an approach to solving those long-standing both flooding or critical issues. So what I want to take you on to is, and Ian, you'll have to tell me if I run over. I'm conscious I've already had 8 minutes, so I'll try and rattle through. Sorry. The success of that program, the trunk sewer program, was really borne out when we got the first one, which said, okay, we found a problem. And the problem which was found was on our largest trunk sewer that goes into Whitlingham WRC, which is the treatment centre for all of Norwich. So it's the biggest one we have. This sewer happens to be 12 metres deep. I think it's about 2.5 metres in diameter, an old brick sewer. So this is what the and I think it might take a while to jump on, but this is what we found. So where those bricks should be, they no longer were, and that's a real problem. This is one of those, and I've called this very deliberately avoiding a disaster, because that's ultimately what this was. Had this inlet sewer have collapsed, then it would have been catastrophic, both in terms of environmental impact and the impact on almost every aspect of PR or finance or anything you can think of, really, that you wouldn't want thrown at you in the water industry. This is one of those sewers where you just don't want anything to ever happen, and there are obviously those across the region and across the country. So I'll come on to how we got this photograph, but essentially this is what it looked like when we'd stopped the flows going through, and you can see there that the top half, or the crown of that pipe, is just earth, essentially. There are a few bricks in there, but that could have collapsed at any point in time. So to get us to a place where we could actually do that, we had to come up with something really innovative, and we engaged with our supply chain and came up with an over-pumping solution, which was at peak having to pump 2,200 litres of sewage a second. And I was told that this was the largest over-pumping of sewage in Europe at the time, and there's no doubt there are people on the calls that go, I doubt it, because we were doing something better, but that was the story I was sold anyway. So the work and the thought and everything that goes into getting something like this up and running was utterly phenomenal. So essentially we removed all of the flow from that system, and here's another example of what that looked like, and it was just a real sight to behold, something which we've never done of that scale before. and hopefully this is ticking round for you, but I don't want to labour on the point because obviously I'm going to run it. If there's any questions or anybody wants to have any information on who did what here or how we did it, I'm more than happy to pick them up in the questions or later on, but I shall move on. So the technique we used to replace this was obviously, you know, the cost of digging down 12 meters and relaying this was just a no-brainer. So we spent an awful lot of time coming up with a solution, and this was it. So without going into detail again, this was the solution which we came up with to avoid that, you know, the dig down and replacement of a massive sewer. And yeah, I'll come on to what it looks like now. So this is a photograph of when they'd finished the work, and given where we'd started with the first picture, this was just utopia for me to go from, you know, ensuring that the resilience of that network is now in place for what I've been told is and should be 100 years, and that's a really good feeling, because I now know that the rest of that system is relatively intact and is actually going to continue to serve Norwich as it should. And now the piece that was wrong, we didn't wait for that to collapse. We avoided that disaster, and it cost an awful lot of money to do this, but it is, for me, it's the best project I've ever been involved with, and something which you can say you took from the concept of going to find out if something was wrong to actually resolving that issue was a great journey, and one which we've carried on with. So just to stick to the brief agenda that I've got, it was something around the COVID response. So if I was to think about our COVID response purely in terms of sewer rehab, it would almost be, and I'll probably get told off for saying this, it sort of happened at the right time in terms of sewer rehab purely because we'd finished the work for AMP6 and we were in the planning phase for year one. So the one scheme which we have on site and going, I'll come on to in a sec. So from a purely sewer rehab perspective, the impact from COVID wasn't quite as painful as it was felt in other parts of the country or other parts of the business or other areas. Having said that, rather than focusing on the negative, because obviously you've all got your own eyes and you're all experiencing this yourself, I probably wouldn't be doing this seminar today. I'd probably be walking around no dig in Peterborough with all of you, and it wouldn't have given the platform that we have like we have now. And you know, if you think about carbon footprint and all of that stuff, the travel has all been avoided. And I don't know where you're all sitting, but I'm guessing that some of you, like me, will be either in your kitchens or in your lounges, and that the whole ability for us to now to communicate and work in a different way really does open up opportunities. And that's something which I'm really keen to talk about, because I have a real passion for taking what we do wider, both in terms of what Ganglion does out to the rest of the industry in terms of the sewer rehab network groups and the innovation labs, but also bringing the brilliant stuff that some of you guys are doing and offering back into Ganglion, because for me, there's been almost a legacy in the water industry up until a point around, you know, within the last few years of we can do this ourselves, we're really, really good, and I completely agree with that. All of the companies that I've worked with are really, really good, but actually we cannot do it on our own, and that for me is one of the most important things that we all do. And these events are critical in that we share and we collaborate and we come up with new ways of doing things, and we don't have all the ideas, but I can assure you there'll be people on this webinar now that do have the ideas to help us out. So, pardon me, I don't know, my residing point from the COVID response is that it doesn't stop collaboration, and it actually should make things easier. It should really make things easier. Although you can't all sit in the same room, you can have 100 people, or what have we got on here now, 100 plus people sitting here engaged in something which is all about trying to drive things forward. So that's my response to how Ganglion has dealt with coronavirus, specifically linked to sewer rehab and wider than that. So hopefully that covers the point off. So as I said, we had one major scheme in AMP7. I've got 5 minutes. And this was in Peterborough. So this is Potter's Way, which some of you would have driven in today, and you'll have seen some of the work we're doing. And what you'll see there in the top right of your screen, I think, when it changes over, is that we had a collapse in 2018, and this sewer didn't make the criteria for the large diameter sewers going into pumping stations, because it didn't meet the criteria of what we said we really wanted to get out, which was both size and distance away. So this one was missed, but it told us that there was a problem by collapsing in, I think it was just before Christmas, almost the week before, like this stuff always tends to. And I think the day before that, there was somebody riding over that with a ride-on lawnmower, and you can see some. Hopefully, you can see those pictures there. So it was in such a poor state that we had to do a temporary repair while we worked out a solution. And whilst this stuff was going on, we were still in the throes of doing the Whitlingham scheme, which gave us traction actually to start pushing this stuff wider and really, getting involved with this sewer rehab stuff that we've not really done before, and money we've not really had to spend before because the assets have been fine. But obviously, as with all of this stuff, they come to the end of their life, and it was an eye-opener. So I think really, if you think about what happened at Whitlingham, the finding of it, then the warning shot here and where we're going with this, it's a great story to play out, which is why I wanted to do this today. So in terms of the strategy for Peterborough as a whole, we can't afford to do everything. As all of you will be aware, you have a finite amount of money and resource, and you have to spread that across the region and mitigate those risks and do what you can. And something which we found no surprising was there was a significant amount of H2S attack in the network. So we introduced a septicity control strategy, I suppose, for Peterborough. And I don't know what you can see, because I'm just looking at sort of bits of the screen, so I'm not sure what you can see, but hopefully what you can see is the HS2, sorry, we shouldn't say that. The H2S readings across the pumping stations following this strategy were significantly lower than where they could have been. So that's twofold for me. Firstly, it will stop that septicity getting any worse in our network. And you could say, well, the horse has bolted, the damage is done, and that is largely true. However, what you can then take from some of this work we've done with some really innovative stuff is take that wider into the catchment to, move it around the region. So where you have those hotspots, you can then do more of this. And this comes from innovation, people really getting involved. So I'm conscious I'm really running out of time. So this talks about where we would need to put some of the over pumping and how we would possibly manage to do that. And it was a real challenge, and one that @ONE, our largest alliance partner, have really just completely blown us away with what they've done, the solution. And because this although Whitlingham was tough, Whitlingham was a really tough job, but it was, thankfully for us, it was on our land in the middle of a field. This is in the middle of a city centre. So the over pumping which you saw at Whitlingham, we engaged with the same supply chain, and they've come back and done it. And this is probably what you would have seen on your way in this morning to No Dig Live, where we are doing this live over pumping in a town centre. And this scale we've done. I mean, we've done it at Broadhome, and we've now done it here, and it's sort of revolutionary for Ganglion. I don't know whether some people will be already doing this stuff, but for us, it was like, wow, we can really do this. And it just, and for me, this drone footage and all of the drone footage that we get now just gives everybody a complete different perspective of just how magnificent some of this stuff is. So again, we're working live here. This was with live flows on some of these sections, and just for us, groundbreaking and a complete game changer. But as much as we've got this now nailed, and I'll probably get told off for saying that we've got this nailed, because we probably haven't, but we're 95% there, I would say. We need more of this type of innovation and no dig solution across the whole network. So that leads me on to these innovative solutions. So I've got 1 minute. I need to be really quick. So this is
Rob, take a moment. You can have a couple more minutes.
Thank you. Okay, so the innovative, so we came up with a rain garden idea, which was, I think, actually originally developed in Welshwater. I think my memory is a bit hazy with this, and it was about trying to do things differently. So keep the surface water here rather than pumping it through a network. So that comes from having those different conversations, the networks of people, the Water Innovation Network, and the collaboration. And finally, this is our proposed, alongside maintaining some of the stuff we did AMP6. It's now about the AMP7 scheme. So we have to live within our final determination, which, as you're all aware, we've taken to the CMA. So without labouring that point, we still have to focus on those sewers that are of critical importance to us. And for this AMP, we're focusing on road, rail and rivers. So all of those sewers that, flow under, and some of them we're aware of and some of them we haven't. So that's the focus. There's a further CCTV campaign around H2S. There's a pitch fibre proactive programme, and there's the monitor instead of rehab, which is, like I said about Peterborough Potter's Way, we can't afford to do everything, but we can afford to monitor everything that we feel is of risk, so that rather than waiting for somebody to tell us something's gone wrong, we are being told. And that is, that's a huge leap forward for us in terms of being aware of your network and having a smart network. And that, with 21 minutes gone, takes me on to any questions. So thank you for listening. And Ian, back to you. I just need to know what to do with my screen. I'll leave it on any questions,
because you might need to refer back. Thanks very much, Rob. Now, first questions have come through, and if you do have questions, do post them. The first one was concerning that near collapse sewer that you had, and the question from John Hensman is, how did you get all the heavy material out of the sewer? It looked like it was fairly heavily blocked, and you had the bricks falling. He was just wondering how that was done.
Okay. Yeah, that was high pressure water jetted out, and there was also an element of having to hand dig some of it when we were down there. And that, so I don't know if I showed a picture of the open catch pit, but there was some hand digging involved. But it was also a monster sized jetting unit.
Right.
And there was next more in there than we anticipated, actually. So yeah, it was a real challenge.
It usually is. The next question, I think you may well have already answered, but this is from Mike Parker. Is the experience that high H2S levels increase rotting of concrete pipes and mortar in brick-lined pipes? Is this a general problem that you've come across, or?
I think it's a well-known problem, isn't it? It's probably a problem that every single person or every single water company will have in their network, unless everybody is completely nailed down with their boasting strategy. So it is a problem. It is a problem, and unless you get on the front foot of that, then you're always waiting for the next collapse. So for us, it was very much about trying to make sure that we were going to find these rather than waiting for them to happen.
Thanks. And on a similar note, a question from Claire Piper, which is a question of the septicity reduction solutions at Peterborough. She's interested to know what the costs are. You might want to answer that one separately. And are you rolling out further the septicity reduction for that site?
Yeah, so I can probably answer both. Yes, we are rolling that out to a further 3 catchments as it stands currently that we've looked at. Probably in terms of cost, I would say around the region would be £160,000, but I can pick that up with Claire afterwards. So I suppose that anything which has come through, which is probably going to involve me going to ask a very specific question, I will go and do that and then come back to whoever's asked.
Thanks. A question again, really about the future program from Mike Barber. Do you have a program aside from into the concrete pipe, for instance, targeting all category A, grade 4 and 5, and maybe category B, grade 5?
Thanks, Mike. I assume you mean CCTV survey. So yes, is the simple answer to that. So we've spent the last 10 years actually surveying all around the region, and we continue to do that. But what we'd found is, and I probably didn't allude to this, is that we were taking a catchment approach to CCTV and then going to find grade 4s and 5 for rehab. But what we'd done as a strategy there wasn't necessarily what operational people needed. So we were finding stuff that wasn't causing them a problem, which we were rehabbing, which is wonderful in terms of extending your network asset life cycle. But what it wasn't doing was addressing those, I know you're doing that over there, but actually we've got a problem here that you're not addressing. So getting on top of that concrete downstream from rising mains, the large inlet sewers, the roads, rails and rivers programme, that was really targeted at the types of sewers that, should they go wrong, they can be a catastrophe for many different reasons. So we switched the strategy, if you like, away from the catchment approach to targeting CCTV. Having said that, we do have an inordinate amount of CCTV data of some grades, 4s and 5s and all of that other magic stuff that sits there. But as with all of this stuff, you have to then prioritise what you can actually invest in and where you think you'll get your biggest return on the investment in terms of life cycle and risk reduction and all of that wonderful stuff that you have to balance off. So Mike, I hope that answers your question. If it doesn't, then I'll come back to you on something else.
Thanks. So we're doing well here. We've got another 5 minutes and some more questions. So from Mike Parker, are pitch fibre laterals a significant quantity in the Ganglion water region?
No, not in the grand scheme of things. They're not. We have pockets. We have pockets of pitch fibre around the region, which, as you'll all know, cause us. Well, when they're fine, but when they cause us a problem, they are, as you know, inherently difficult to both deal with or maintain without actually doing some sort of proper capital invention, because once they're deformed, and there's not a great deal you can do without actually spending some money. So yeah, I suppose like most people, we have pockets of that, but it's not a huge problem for us, in that it will be the same for every single water company.
Okay, and the next one is from Simon G, and oh, this might be a tough one. With a tight focus on what will be rehabbed in AMP7 to fit with your FD final determination, how confident are you that you can meet your asset health ODIs? The question may be, the answer may be you're waiting to see what your FD is.
Yeah, quite. However, I'm in a significantly more comfortable place than I would have been if you'd have asked me 3 years ago, because of the work we've done. So without going over it, the work that we've done is to go and look at those places that are really going to bite. So yeah, the short answer for me is I feel significantly more confident in that we have targeted the right, and we continue to target the right thing. Am I confident that we can address all of those in terms of them being financeable? Well, no, definitely not. And that's why you need to have a different strategy. That's why you need the smarter catchments and the network monitoring and all of that other stuff, because we have to be really aware that things will go wrong. We work in an industry where things go wrong, and it's trying to get ahead of the curve. So if something is telling us there's a problem and we can react proactively rather than waiting for something to happen, that's the end goal for us, because the same as any other water company, you can't afford to do it all. But what I think we can all do is become a lot smarter, and we've become significantly smarter over the last AMP period, and moving into this one, that it will continue to grow.
Right. A question from Shauna Heron, which is, does carbon reduction feature prominently in choosing no dig for your AMP7 program?
Yes. Yeah, so as you know, well, as some of you will know, we've been on a carbon reduction journey now for a long period of time, and Ganglion have been seen as leading in carbon reduction. So, like I think I said, lots of the stuff we've done is always around trying to reduce our carbon footprint. So that's Tech-Knot tanks and reducing the amount of concrete that we pour into the ground. And the no dig stuff is, is all going to reduce the carbon that we've probably had as a bit of a legacy in the water industry. So in short, yes, it's still a really high priority for us.
Thanks. And a question, we've got time for one more question. And it is one from Simon Compton, which is interested in sewer rising main rehab, especially where the pipes cross under or near roads, rivers and railways. What's the Ganglion water approach to that?
Now there's the silver bullet that we all need. We all need that we will need the golden ticket for rising mains, because they are, as you all are aware, intrinsically difficult to determine asset health. And largely, we're not funded to go and do a great deal of proactive digging down on them. We are largely reactive. We have a proactive program for rising mains, and that's part of the asset health ODI. And we have a really good proactive program, but it's a really good shout. So you have to take into consideration, don't you, the age of the asset, the health that you think it's going to be in, with a bit of that, if we're all honest with each other, and the material and what's been going through it. So that's something which we are really pushing this AMP, because those failures from rising mains, again, I don't think we've always been as smart with those as we could be, in terms of where, say, our water colleagues are. And I have a wonderful example, actually, of something which I could tell you how hard somebody was breaking around a corner at some periods of time, but I couldn't tell you what flow was going down all of our rising mains. And that is absolutely the same across the whole of the water industry, having spoken to everybody. But the leaps we've all made in becoming more smart and understanding our assets over the last, certainly the last AMP period, is we're miles ahead of where we were. We were incredibly dumb as an industry, really, and we are, we're in a much better place, and we need to continue that journey.
Great. Well, Rob, thank you very much for your presentation and keeping so well to time. A good start to the day. Right. Well, we are now going to move on to a presentation by Welsh Water. And I've just moved one slide on too fast. There's a delay. Right. We have a presentation from Callum Meredith of Welsh Water. Now, the thing is that Callum, unfortunately, is not available to give his presentation, but he was able to record it beforehand. So what we're going to do now is to play the recording. Please post your questions. I will read out the questions at the end, and we will get Callum to answer them after the event. So we now hand over to my colleague from Westrade, who is going to put up the recording. You will see the recording of the screen appear, and then there's a slight delay before Callum starts speaking.
Hello all, my name's Callum Meredith and I work for Welsh Water as a South East Asset Manager covering below ground infrastructure. Apologies I couldn't be there on the day, but this is sort of a high level presentation and overview of our AMP7 sewer rehabilitation programme and our PR24 planning. The first slide highlights a few points around Welsh Water's approach to PR19 and the AMP7 programme. Where maintenance money was determined via a top-down assessment of expenditure need and risk. The programme itself has been aligned to our 2050 strategy, resulting in the development of a number of responses, strategic responses, and also development plans. A risk-based programme was developed and the trial, at the tail end of AMP6 to address risks associated with customer service and also service level problems. We are moving towards a more proactive approach to programme management to focus on priority sites and address issues before failure actually occurs. So the AMP7 programme itself, from a high level perspective, is made up of name schemes, programmes and strategic funding. Name schemes are broken down into investment cases, and those relevant to sewer rehab include our Section 101 first time sewerage schemes, 202, which is continuous and intermittent discharges, which is looking at SOAF and also bathing water assessments, and moving on to our sewer HO sewer flooding program, which currently has a year one alliance investigation program of 21 sites across all Wales. Worship customers are also focusing on and also looking at enhanced mitigation schemes and also development of emergency plans. So sort of the largest of the investment cases being sewer maintenance, which includes our MOS-led strategies, which is measures of success, pollution and flooding name schemes, and also minor work schemes and initiatives. Moving on to 210, so intermittent discharges, which is made up of mainly pollution schemes and also forward-looking capital maintenance. And finally, looking at asset resilience, which is looking into critical sewer assessments, surveys, and then condition assessments as well. So the purpose behind the MOS-led strategies are, initiatives required to tackle challenging targets and budget allowance, target repeat incidents, and mitigate via minor works delivery. And this covers MOSs such as DG5, so internal flooding, pollution, worst served customers, and asset resilience. A key focus area is around efficient delivery to ensure that we have the right people and expertise are available to get the best value for money. This has sort of been split down into 4 areas. So wastewater assets, the Alliance, our engineering delivery team, and operations. Where wastewater assets, we're looking to increase our function for minor works delivery. This will be focusing on low value schemes, but delivering high outputs and ensuring a thorough and definitive root cause analysis prior to scheme feasibility release. And we'll also look to utilize innovative technologies to confirm RCA, and this includes technologies such as electroscan. Moving on to sort of Alliance delivery, we're looking to batch schemes and investigations where possible for efficiency, promote collaboration and innovation, and also big focus on risk and value sessions to ensure the correct investment is progressed, and also discussions around the acceptable level of risk to take forward. In terms of the engineering delivery team, we look to utilize this team to deliver defined scopes of work, which are usually high priority, high risk schemes, and also sort of move into that more ops-led type approach for ops-led fixes at lower cost to traditional schemes. In terms of the AMP7 MOS strategies, these have been developed to target known problem areas proactively and looking at low cost resolution. So focusing mainly on flooding and pollution reduction through register reviews, focusing on repeat incidents, also 12 monthly follow-on reviews where we look to assess and resolve any residual risk, and also focusing on proactive tools, examples being the rising main triangle for burst prioritization, and understanding of business risk, and also heat maps for other cause flooding, and also pollution hotspots, which we can use to develop proactive survey programs. We're also looking at worst served customers. So this is a new measure covering customers at risk of repeat or internal flooding within a 10-year period. Tasks for this include register reviews and audits to confirm customers at risk and also remove them from the registers through minor work schemes to tackle OC issues. And the aim here being is to remove all worst served customers aligned to our 2050 vision. And finally, looking at asset resilience, where we are identifying and surveying critical assets to inform of condition and also in future investment need. And the next slide, this just gives a brief overview of one of our flow charts, which shows in this particular incident, it's relating to the pollution strategy. I appreciate this is quite small, but I'm sure you'll be able to look at it in a little bit more detail when the presentation has been circulated. The next slide, this gives a brief overview of our EDM installer program and also SOAF. So 2,189 event duration monitors were installed in Wales over AMP6, and also in 2018 we completed a pilot study of 51 sites in the southeast area. The purpose of this was to understand the AMP7 and also our AMP8 delivery strategy. The wastewater assets team, we have heavy involvement in the RCA root cause identification, and also looking at the cleansing, mitigation delivery through minor works, and also involvement in option development for some of the larger schemes which sort of have the HO type driver. The SOAF process will provide evidence to the need for EDM driven maintenance for future investment, and also formal reporting of EDM performance provides assurance that our investment programs are targeting the correct assets. The below flow diagram shows a high-level flow chart, which shows the SOAF process in terms of from prioritization and identification through to root cause, identification of the spill, through to impact assessment, and then option development. This slide shows an example of a SOAF delivered screen through wastewater assets, which involves site investigations, telemetry review, and scenario testing to inform of the hydroslide removal. And this had a very positive result, which showed a reduction in spill frequency from 200 to 80 spills. But this was a positive example, so it shows that through in-house investigation and understanding, we can deliver positive results through minor works delivery. So we get small value schemes to deliver high output results. As mentioned previously, a focus is towards proactive investment and investigation. So evidence shows we need to be more proactive and use data to target low cost, high output investment. This includes trend analysis regarding root cause and also targeting known repeat issues and OC problems. This also feeds into the proactive initiatives mentioned earlier in the presentation to target areas of poor performance and proactively investigate to inform a future investigation. Some examples here are, again, which were mentioned previously as the other cause flooding heat maps, pollution triangles, and also rising mean burst triangle. In AMP7, we need to look to be more proactive and collaborate with all stakeholders to get best value for money and also achieve our targets through this linked up approach. This includes improved visibility to ensure long-term buy-in and also sustainable management of the SM&R type approaches. Some examples of this have been rainscape initiatives, working with local authorities, and also involvement of our flood alleviation schemes, which are joined up with local councils and also the regulator. Next slide is regarding risk management to inform of in-AMP and future expenditure. So it's very important to have that accurate risk position with supporting our RCA, so root cause analysis documentation, to inform of both in-AMP and future spend. A big push is on definitive root cause prior to release of any scheme. So this ensures that we've got the correct root cause and we're focusing on the right options to push forward. We need to also utilize existing information, so sustainable draining plans, outputs from other initiatives such as SOAF to feed into these programs. And we also need to sort of look at, which I've discussed earlier, is trying to push more on the delivery of minor works programs, so we get best value output to achieve our MOS for low value scheme delivery. So the next slide sort of talks about some of the challenges which we've had around COVID-19. So some of the main challenges really being delays due to lockdown protocol and social distancing rules. And also this obviously includes equipment and material lead times. This is sort of especially regarding the minor works program, which requires access into customer properties, etc. So obviously we've had to take into account their customer needs, which has resulted in delays in some of the programs. Also, we've had a reduction in site attendance to inform of work scopes and health and safety audits. And yeah, I'm sure it's the same with a lot of the other companies, with increased number of complaints due to the fact that customers are actually obviously at home a lot more often. So what have we sort of done to get around this, and what have we implemented? We've had the continuation of essential works aligned to government and also company policy. The essential workers and works classification to ensure delivery of critical schemes continues. And also I think we've had a fairly smooth transition into the working at home environment for all of our non-operational colleagues. And sort of what this has led to us to do, especially with the minor works program, is look to proactively reprioritize to ensure that the schemes we're delivering are not actually directly affecting customers, but are still looking to improve our MOS and our performance targets. Also, something else we've looked to do is, in terms of health and safety inspections, is taking on a light sort of approach, we've called it. So still making sure we've been able to get out to site, especially during the earlier months of COVID. But this is just a sort of approach from a distance, and it's just taking into account the cleanliness and social distancing rules. And in terms of any sort of additional documentation regarding site certificates, RAMs, etc., if we're not unable to review on site, we'll make sure we pick that up with supervisors back in the office. The next slide is around innovation. So what we've been looking at and focusing on this AMP, and also where potentially the supply chain could offer some benefit or potentially guidance. So we've been trialing, installing and developing a number of innovation projects over the AMP and from the tail end of AMP 6. So survey techniques it's a big one. So looking at more efficient, quicker and quicker delivery of survey techniques with less reliance on man entries. So perfect examples of this being sonar surveys and electroscan, which we've used at a number of sites now for infiltration identification. No dig methods. So we're looking at a potential trial with a framework contractor for siphon removal. So this is looking at, rather than actually the dig down associated with that, looking at using hydrocutting technology and then lining. So we've got a trial this month, so it'll be really interesting to feedback and let you know, and let the group know what the outcome of that was. And also utilising blockage retrieval tools. So this is sort of for our operational crews, which the figures show it's a massive reduction in the amount of dig downs we've had to do from actually being able to retrieve blockages and third-party objects from the sewers without actually having to dig down. We're looking at dosing, so optimizing dosing. So we've got a trial which is due to start in October for one of our sites in Cardiff, which is using a different type of other than Neutrox, so it's called Biofarm BioClean, which is from previous trials has seemed to have a real reduction in fog and also H2S levels in other countries. So like I said, the trial will be going on in October. I'll be happy to feedback the results from there in terms of H2S and also fog reduction. And looking at data to inform investment, so hotspot analysis, which I touched on previously, and also using real-time analysis of telemetry and rainfall data to predict flooding and pollution incidents. So in terms of potential other areas for the supply chain and support areas, I think it would be positive around if there was any further information around rising main surveys, which I know we've discussed in some of the previous sewer rehab group meetings, which seems to be an open-end area at the moment. Infiltration identification techniques, and also manhole sealing techniques to prevent infiltration. And also if there's anything around flow monitoring of small diameter networks. So this is now sort of moving on to some of the challenges we're facing in terms of now and for the future, and sort of looking at PR24. So some of the challenges is changing in customers' expectations, changes due to urban creep, greater inflows into our networks, climate change, and also an aging asset infrastructure. So what we try to do is align this to Welsh Water's 2050 strategy and strategic responses. So this is working with our customers and communities. So again, looking at those SM&R type approaches and rangescape initiatives, working with our partners, addressing our worst served customers, cleaner rivers and beaches. So this is focusing on our EDM program and also SOAF investigations, and protecting our critical assets. So this will be through surveys this AMP to determine structural condition and inform future investment and spend requirements. So this slide just shows one example of one of our journey plans, which is for this one in particular is for the worst served customer, which essentially shows the current position which we're in now and sort of the stages and milestones in which we want to implement different strategies and investigations to get to our ultimate goal, which in this instance is 0 worst served customers by 2050. So a quick summary in terms of preparing for PR24. So looking at lessons learned from previous AMPs, we need to provide more evidence to develop performance commitments and justify investment. Ensure our investment management system reflects catchment position accurately, and try and get ops buy-in and get their awareness early on with these name schemes. So again, to develop a robust AMP8 investment program, we want to engage with asset strategy early on to build a bottom-up investment program, provide name schemes with definitive root cause and option cost to inform investment requirements to give a more accurate plan. Utilize existing data and also build on the findings from drainage management plans, which will be ongoing throughout this AMP and which will feed into the the PR24 program. And also develop long-term sustainable solutions to address challenges such as increased urban creep, extreme weather events, etc. And continue to build on and develop these journey plans, which are set out in our Welsh Water 2050 strategy. And just to summarise, so in terms of AMP7, the programme has been aligned to our 2050 vision and long-term aspirations, which leads into the development of our journey plans. It's a risk-based AMP7 programme. Evidence analysis shows that we need to be more proactive, so looking at those proactive initiatives, MOS strategies to target low-cost, high-output investment, so focusing on OC issues and repeats, and we need to utilise minor works delivery and also wastewater assets teams and operational delivery for high output to meet our targets, but for low cost solutions. And in terms of relationships, build on the collaboration we have in previous AMPs in this AMP. Further engagement is required and building on the collaboration and those sustainable management type approaches. And finally, looking at AMP8 and PR24 is developing on this catchment type approach, ensuring we have defined RCA and name schemes, and ensure we have that engagement with all stakeholders, including asset strategy and our regulators early doors to inform of our PR24 program. Thank you, and yeah, any questions I'll be happy to pick up and get back to you. Thank you.
Standard or not, there was a lot of disturbance and crack in terms of APAC and stuff. But Jack.
Hello again, everybody. And as we have explained, we're not able to take the questions at the moment for Callum. He has offered to show us to deal with those when he returns. Now, what we have got, I will read them out, are as follows. The first one concerns is Callum able to provide some more information regarding their objectives for electroscan methods? The second one regards, could he elaborate on the rising main triangle? What is it and how is it used? And a third question, this is probably common to all of the presentations, and we'll have to ask the speakers about it. The comment is that, so when the slides are circulated, would it be possible to include an explanation of the acronyms contained on the slides? The listener has recorded 8 so far and still counting. And essentially, if you want to ask any further questions for Callum, please post them up on the questions. If you could mark them for Callum's attention, and we will deal with those later for you. Now, we have a break, and this will last until 10:15, a comfort break for everybody when we return. And at that point, we will be hearing from the island of Ireland, starting with a presentation from Irish Water and then moving on to Northern Ireland Water. So we hope you've enjoyed what you've heard so far, and we look forward to continuing again at 10:15. Thank you. Well, welcome back, everybody, to the second part of this morning's webinar. We hope you've had a chance to catch up with your email, make a cup of coffee. Unfortunately, there's no exhibition for us to go and peruse as we would have been doing in Peterborough at the moment. Well, the next presentation is from Irish Water, and I'm pleased to welcome Keith Bingham and Peter Kehoe, who will be making the presentation, and Emma and Cattell, who are available to assist with questions. So over to Keith. Oh, Keith, we can see your email at the moment. Yep, you're up. And Keith, can't hear your audio.
That should be us now, I think.
Yep. Yes, but now we've got email again. let's get the we're back to the presentation, and we've got your audio. So over to you.
Okay, excellent. That's us. Thank you, Ian. Thank you, everyone who's joining. Good morning. Yeah, I'm Keith Bingham. I'm a chartered civil engineer, but I'm also an associate director in the asset management team with AECOM Ireland Water, Ports and Power. Over the last few years, I've been involved with the Institute of Asset Management, and currently an IAM committee member. So while I love the technical side of sewer rehab, I'm also interested to see how our work fits into the bigger picture of delivery of organisational objectives. So enough about that. Today's topic is about sewer rehabilitation plans and needs. A little bit about what is happening on the island of Ireland in the current regulatory cycle. We're going to look briefly at a case study in our time. It's a particularly interesting case study in the middle of Dublin, and find out later on as well a little bit more about what's happening with Northern Ireland Water. So we'll try to draw together some thoughts about continuous improvement. And that is a daily thing, given these last 6 months particularly, and look at all this in view of challenges of risk management using the underpinning principles of good asset management. So maybe to preface this, perhaps there's never been a greater need for the phrase risk management in the public sphere than right now, and perhaps there's never been a time where risk management has been more relevant to sewer rehab projects. It doesn't have to be a complicated thing. Just a constant awareness of what is going on in our organisations and the external influences that may affect our rehab projects or our organisation's business. So risk management is arguably the most important thing. So maybe just skip back a slide and we'll look at just what we are doing on the island of Ireland at the moment. So embracing current scientific thinking, water utilities are tasked with delivering technical excellence in spite of increasing financial, social and environmental risks. That much is clear and has been clear from presentations already. Irish Water are under the same pressure to use tighter capital resources to maintain a rather large sewage asset base. So the challenge is we can't fix everything, but using risk-based principles, where do we do our sewer rehab, and where do we leave as is until funds become available at a later time? So on screen, you can see, hopefully you can see just a couple of photographs of some of the rehab that has been undertaken across the island of Ireland. And during 2020, unplanned, unplanned, reactive, proactive, if you want to call it, rehab works have not ceased. But certainly this year, for most part of this year, has certainly provided space to focus efforts on asset planning activity. So that activity which seeks to continually improve risk-based decision making. How can we make decisions on potential rehab projects if the data is false or misleading? And that point is very important in all of this, because the more we know about our assets, the better decision making can be, and we can direct scarce and precious funding to the right projects. So invariably sewer rehab is undertaken in urban environments, and the key risks are easy to identify. Sewer collapses cause much damage to other utilities and nearby structures. Risks of disruption to key services. Think of hospitals or tourism generating places of interest. And there are also risks to safety and safe working practices. And think COVID-19 aspects at the present time. There's always the risk of reputational damage, and see the little news article on the top right-hand corner of your screen. And there's always the potential of localized flooding with resulting pollution to watercourses and in social spaces. So whether it's an open cut pipe repair in the middle of Galway's tourism hub, and definitely go to the west of Ireland if you get a chance during this staycation time. If it's a straightforward CIPD of 225 VC pipe in the middle of Meath, whether it's a big 1800 mil diameter concrete CPP pipe rehab in the middle of Dublin, a little bit more about that later when we talk about Golden Bridge, or a renovation of an early 1900s brick culvert in Cork. The principles of asset management give us a good basis for ensuring a consistent flow of work in line with regulatory targets and risk-based prioritization in order to deliver work on the ground for the public benefit. So we're trying to stay abreast of risks to organizational objectives and to project delivery of sewer rehabilitation projects. It doesn't have to be a complicated thing, just a constant awareness, or I'm encouraging a constant awareness of what's going on in our organizations and the external influences that may affect our projects or our organization's business. So a little bit about context and key principles. Even before coronavirus, organizations were facing an urgent need to change. Sustainability, resilience, profitability, reputation, compliance with regulatory targets. The challenges are pressing. So on screen, hopefully you should see the conceptual model from the IAM, and we want to look at just what asset management is. Well, it is a coordinated activity. Assets can be made of anything. It's a brand, a license, a right of way, a group of companies, opportunities, anything in which we invest to achieve a purpose. At the top level, we have the organizational strategic plan. And below that, then you have a series of 6 potential functions. So the strategy and planning and asset management decision-making roles are vital in translating organizational objectives to action. And life cycle delivery is perhaps where we find ourselves in the midst of the sewer rehab projects we have in Ireland. That is the creation, the acquisition, the operation, and the maintenance and disposal of assets. In the midst of all of that, we have to remember that part of life cycle delivery is also about creating and updating standards and specifications for consistent and improving works delivery. And more about that in coming days, as well as we work with the with SRM, with WRC and various other bodies to produce a standard that will hopefully impact the industry for many years to come. 4 fundamentals. ISO 55000 promotes these 4 fundamentals: value, leadership, alignment, and assurance. And within that is the thread of risk management, so that there is integration of risk-based processes and activities to transform organizational objectives into asset management plans. Plenty of documentation to help with all of this. But the importance of risk management in an organization is to create that positive working culture, to maintain compliance, to try and uphold corporate values, and to think about the current time, set the tone for handling high-profile crisis. Risk management can be the safety net of an organization if and when things go wrong. And so we want to use, as AECOM, we want to use the principles that we have at our disposal to help our clients, in this case Irish Water, to become better asset stewards, and probably more about asset stewardship in the years to come as well, as that phrase becomes more prevalent. So a little bit on an organizational approach to capital maintenance. The slide you'll see tries to depict that everything affects everything. So throughout all of the services that are involved in an organisation's delivery of a capital maintenance project, and all of those are starred as shown. There are links generated between different functions in the organisation. So the challenge then is trying to make that coordinated approach between all of those things, and probably the only way to do that is through risk management. So what does risk management call us to do? Well, it calls us to assess and manage risks, quite simply, to control risks. It calls us to look above the risks that are inherent to project level, and also to look at the asset management processes and procedures that sit behind all of that, to provide confidence in what we're doing for ourselves and our clients. Monitoring and reviewing progress and performance is critical to all of this, and that is a continual process of honest critique and continual improvement. We're not saying what we have or what we're presenting is perfect by any means, but we're saying that it's better than it was yesterday, and tomorrow will be better than it was today. So reviewing, auditing compliance with all of the legal, regulatory, ethical and social requirements, we have to keep abreast of things in a very risky environment out there. Don't bury heads in sand, keep going, and let's listen and learn from others. Learning from incidents, continually improving together. We don't have all the answers, but we're trying to answer the powerful questions together to evoke positive change for us all. Risk management, capital maintenance within an organisation. So this diagram is entirely fictional, but it ties risks back to organisational value. So you should see that every risk which we address within our sewer rehab programmes and projects should address an organisational risk. If it doesn't address an organisational risk, why do we do our sewer rehab programmes in the first place? So this is entirely fictional, as I've mentioned, but think about a risk register you know, or that you've come across in its myriad of forms. If there is a risk of an operational asset failure, an organisation will initiate planned or unplanned maintenance programmes, and these will typically be delivered by an organisation's service providers as work orders to address that risk. So tie the risks back to the organisational objectives. Mentioning COVID-19, at the moment it has played havoc with many organisations' asset delivery targets. Resilience analysis and contingency planning is something which we have to consider in all of this, so that risk can be addressed in a way that suits the organisation's overall objectives. So as I mentioned at the start, maybe that means scaling back on asset delivery work and putting more emphasis, using the space, the time created to do more in the asset planning space. Mentioning as well just asset data gaps or inaccuracies, which can lead to poor decision making. So we as a sewer rehab team collect thousands, tens of thousands, maybe hundreds of thousands of pieces of data that update an organisation's Irish Water's systems, and we have to get good quality data in there to try and make good quality decisions. So certainly the minutiae of the detail is very, very important to the overall organisation's objectives, and it's important for us to remember that. So in summary, good risk management ensures that work will add value to organisational objectives, and let's keep that in mind and keep it very simple. Risk management is a continual process. So the SRM is the basis for sewer rehab risk management, and we have adapted the SRM a little bit just to try and cover off our assessment, investigation, plan development and implementation stages. And at certain points, yes, there is an assessment of the criticality of the assets in addition to the overall risk assessment. So there would be loads to say on that, but the key point is that this is a continuous cycle. It's a process with information central to the process, and we need good quality data to make good decisions. The example shows quite well risk management, I suppose like asset management, can't be treated like a piece of software, buy, install and move on to the next problem. It takes a switched on client and a knowledgeable team to engage in proactive risk management and continual improvement. So just a little bit more in depth on Irish Water's risk-based prioritisation as the central methodology employed by Irish Water. The methodology is fairly straightforward. It's the consequence of failure by likelihood of failure equating to total risk. And then based on the data gathered, and the data, as you'll see on the left-hand side of the screen, there's a lot in there about ease of repair, customer impact, environmental impact, a lot of GIS data that holds the structural condition grade and the infiltration scores, the material scores that contribute to this. But the learning point in all this is that dealing with incomplete data can't be avoided. If you wait until your asset registers are complete and perfect, it never will be. So get the total risk, score it as best we can now, and then make decisions based on cohorts of rehab activity that could take place in similar geographic locations. So moving on, just to mention our proactive workflow strategy. So when we talk about risk, maybe it's fair to say that we, the people who are working on sewer rehab projects, we are human after all. We're not perfect, but we perhaps present the most inherent risk if we don't follow well-established procedures. So it's important to agree a workflow strategy that works for all stakeholders. Again, there's no perfect solution. Irish Water's rehab strategy has a well-established process of gathering data from legacy local authorities, inspection planning by asset planning, followed by condition assessment by asset delivery, often undertaken by external contractors. And then following that condition assessment, data is fed into the prioritization tool and a selection process supposed to determine rehab works. Budget considerations are made using the sewer rehab assessment tool, followed by detailed design and delivery. In summary, there are some key learning points in all of this. And the key learning points are, if we analyze the entirety of the strategy, well, three key learning points: enshrining stakeholder responsibilities. You can see the 4 different stakeholders across the top. Following workflow processes from inception to delivery of sewer rehab, and following those to the letter. Then thirdly, just recognizing the large number of interactions required throughout the processes. So there will always be planned and there will always be unplanned reactive maintenance required outside of established procedures, but these still follow similar steps for review and verification. We do risk management every day of our lives. Hopefully this topic hasn't been any more complicated than it needs to be. It is arguably one of the most important topics we need to look at right now. And a useful way for us to view what's going on the island of Ireland is to look at a prominent sewer collapse in the centre of Dublin, Golden Bridge 9C sewer rehab project. And I'm going to spend just a few minutes on that now, and I think Cal is going to talk about that. And before I go, thank you, and just to let you know that there are other ways you can engage with Irish Water and their service providers, not least mentioning that the story of water is something which is worth a look, that aired on national television a few months ago. So with that, I'll leave you and let Cathal take us briefly through some of the aspects of the Golden Bridge 9C project. Over to you, Cathal.
We don't seem to have his audio.
Hello, good morning.
Yep.
Good morning,
Can hear
folks.
you now. Can hear you now.
Thank you. Morning, folks. Cathal Kelly from GMC Group here in Dublin. Thanks for the opportunity to speak here this morning. Folks, just to give you some background into the Golden Bridge, or Shore Road as it's locally called, the 9C, and the background to the project itself. The 9C is the main artery foul outfall from the whole of North County Dublin. It's a 1200 water main that runs all the way underneath the Phoenix Park in Dublin, if anybody's aware of it, under the River Liffey. It's a siphon foul main under pressure and comes out at Rings End, total of 20 odd kilometres. The collapse itself was noted generally back in the summer of 2019, and to be honest with you, the collapse occurred in a very significant environmental area at the Grand Canal, and it became headline news throughout the country due to the impact to the environment and due to the fact that it's very much a local amenity in Dublin for the residents and people during work hours and things like that. And also it's the main traverse to the southern Shannon in Ireland from the barges all the way from Grand Canal Dock. Hit headlines, all the journals worldwide and in Ireland hit and made news. GMC were engaged early days by Irish Water to give an idea of what were the possibilities of controlling of carrying out these works. There was no potential for us to shut this sewer off due to the constant flow and the catchment area. So it was decided that apart from drilling, some ground-borne or some trench technique, we go with a GOP or our system. And you can see some immediate sites and work there coming up there. Again, the first thing we had to do was try and secure the canal itself to stop any more influx of water. So we, in association with Waterways Ireland, we started to build the dam immediately. And again, to secure the collapse and any further loss of water, and while keeping any marine or canal water there. And you can see some of the pictures. Complexities on site, lads, I suppose was an awful lot of unknowns due to the fact there was a collapse. There was huge levels of H2S, hydrogen sulfide, which means we couldn't access a live sewer with high flows in a period of around September to Christmas. Again, the weather, a lot of this sewer was working at 80 to 90% capacity, and again, the risk in the flooding from the canal or a surcharge. And I suppose we had to do an awful lot of trials, testing, camera work. Initially, there was no man access at all, and you can see the level of H2S, that hydrogen sulfide attacks on the infrastructure in the area. I suppose GMC took out initially to carry out as much desktop studies, start working on flow controls, modelling scenarios. We got in contact with the local authority, Dublin City Council, to start detailing what options we had for several flows further up the line or down the low, and what our action plan would be. It became very apparent very quickly that this was a job. The magnitude increased with regards to the flow. So both in the end of the term, we came up with the agreement that we're going to GRP line of 75 meters in the area, due to the fact that the trenches wasn't a solution due to a high pressure mask, a high pressure gas main, high pressure water, and also the 9B. Also, what I haven't touched on just there is that the line actually runs under the light rail tram called the Lewis here in Dublin. So the complexity of that is the canal was the Lewis, and one of the main arteries in and around Dublin in the canal. So the traffic levels were huge. Again, once we had agreed on GOP, we went in and we did a lot of surveying, non-invasive surveying, measuring. We started detailing the effects of the liner we were going to use. Once we had that, our manufacturer, Channel Line in United Arab Emirates, got manufacturing. They pulled out all the stops on behalf of the client and ourselves to get this here early days, and generally a 12-week turnaround for fabrication was done in 3 to 4 weeks, and the liners themselves were shipped quickly. They were express shipped from the UAE. Again, flow management. Eventually, once we knew the line was coming up, we totally dammed the canal. Fisheries were involved. We totally took any spawning fish, any wildlife out of the areas, and we went to work cleaning, preparing. Again, once the cleaning operations we removed 120 ton of debris by hand via access shafts. Once we had done a structural survey of the pipe itself, once we had taken the load of it, we had a structural engineer do a non-invasive survey, and as you can see from some of the pictures coming up there, we could actually see the steel, the internal steel, the concrete had been totally eaten away. We had put some shields and some protective measures in there for the workers while cleaning, and we used a lot of non-invasive techniques, inverted heads, hand cleaning into safe locations again, so we wouldn't carry out any more structural damage, especially under the area of the light rail. And I suppose that went very well for her. Again, once we had that, we had the liners delivered from Dubai. Again, the liners we have been using the DWA specification away from the old WRC. The liners arrived and the installation started in earnest. On top of the line in earnest, we got bad periods of heavy inclement weather as we do in Ireland. I suppose that initially put us behind to mitigate risk to the lads. We had taken the option that under any level of a certain level of rainfall, 48 hours beforehand, we would carry out no works. To the issue of surcharging up the line, and again with the canal at times takes uncharted connections from roads and things like that from prior, so the rainfall into canal can increase. As we progress with the job, again, I think we installed 75 meters of liners in regards to 3 weeks. Grout went very well. Part of the job was the total relining of the canal, dam, and the opening up. All in all, from the day we put the shovel on the ground on the 18th of December, we got out quickly in May, in area, in time just for what would be generally the tourist season for the barge. We did all this to add to the complexity. Obviously, COVID lockdown hit in around St. Patrick's Day, and just after 17th of March was lockdown. We did discuss with Irish Waters, and it was an essential service due to the fact of the flows had increased due to the number of people working from home, because generally a lot of this is residential. We took out all the critical infrastructure works scenarios. We were probably one of the first people in Ireland to be on the ground on COVID. We worked with Irish Water and with the ORE on this job to ensure that we were applying all the early requirements from COVID. So not only working with the risks associated with the physical works, but the COVID, which again was a learning curve, and we had to implement a lot of measures. The lining, the canal has gone very well. Today it is all in use. It was particularly challenging feat to get the guys to understand that this was a very complex and a very high risk job. Our systems for safety, our systems for design, and again we went through it detail by detail, a lot of long hours with Irish Water, the RE Burn Lubies, and a lot of people came together at Waterways Ireland, DCC, to make sure this would work, and plus with the residential area side us, and all in all a very successful job for all involved in the end. Thanks for listening there. Any questions there, folks?
Right. Well, thanks very much. Now, there was a problem, which we do apologise, during that part of the presentation. The earlier part of your slides didn't actually show, but the audience can see them again now. So what I'd like to do is, while we pose a few questions, I think, Emma, you're running the screen. Could you just go back to the beginning of the presentation about the site in Dublin and just click through those slides slowly so that the audience can see them again while we're talking. Apologies, everybody, and you will be getting the slides next week. So I've got a question here for the Irish Water team, which is on what grounds, if you can answer this one, on what grounds do you prefer the DWA specification, the German specification, over the SRM?
Well, shall I take that one, Cal? Yeah, the specifications within the contract documentation, procurement and so on. At the moment, it is up to the detail designer to decide which of the industry specifications he is to employ. So at the moment, both are acceptable based on the criteria. This is, I suppose, where testing really becomes most important, because we want to be a group, and indeed we have kind of pushed the boundaries on testing in recent days, where we're testing every liner, and we're finding that well, now on 100% of the liners are passing. regardless of the original specification, the design criteria used. So probably that in effect is testament to the fact that the detailed design criteria, the specifications out there, whilst again they're not perfect, they do satisfy the requirement for a good quality liner. So I'm not sure if that answers the question in totality, but I don't know if you want to add anything to that one, Carol.
I'd say from the contractor side, lads, we first engaged with the DWA with the German standards down in Limerick. Some of the sewers are obviously, the old Victorian sewers are they're egg-shaped and they're very bespoke. We find with the DWA, it's the grading system of the existing of the hose pipe. Your 1, 2, 3. It's actually more defined, and therefore you can work with the client to determine an extra safety factor. In the SRM, sometimes a relays, and there was a query relaying back to the boot head hall factor. It was very open-ended. We got into long discussions, and again, this was a different project. We got into very long discussions with regards to the boot head hall being applied, and it became cumbersome. We found with the DWA, it was very clean cut. You detailed your hose pipe, you detailed the quality of the hose pipe, and then what output you wanted. And I have to say, from a contractor side, and we were the designers as well with Channel Line in UAE, it was very clear cut on what we needed to provide to themselves and ourselves for a design purpose.
Thanks very much. We will take one more question. We've just reached the nearing the end of this particular session, but another question was, what was the GRP liner grouted in place, and if so, what grout technique did you use given the sensitivity of the canal?
Yes, it was grouted. The annulus was about 50 mil all around it. We used a Reader GHF1 grout. When we spragged the liner, what we use is we use the technique of sectional filling, obviously to avoid any buoyancy. Because the canal itself was dammed off, we technically had no issues with regard, and we gravity fed the sewer for grout internally and externally to ensure. And what we did is, through control methods of volume and detailing through our surveyors, we worked out the capacity that we required, and we cross-referenced this. But lucky enough, at the time of grouting and installation, we had stopped the canal running. It was technically dammed off, so we could just gravity feed from the side of the bank.
Thanks very much. Well, we will have to address, there are a few more questions, but we'll have to address them separately afterwards. Now, apologies to everybody once again for the slight lack of slides during part of that presentation. As I said, you will receive them and you'll have a chance to go through them. And I think there's a phenomenal amount of detail, particularly in what Keith Bingham had to say. And Keith, when you started speaking about we the people, I thought you were going to start issuing a new version of the US Constitution. But thank you very much to Irish Water. We are now moving on to Northern Ireland Water, and I'm pleased to welcome Mark Sefton, who will be presenting on their behalf. Over to you, Mark.
Good morning. Can everybody hear me?
Yes, I can hear you. And Mark, you just need to put your slides up.
Okay. Let's just see if I've got the correct view here.
You've got the general view, not the PowerPoint screen view. I think you just need to change to your other screen.
Okay, let's see.
There we go. That's it.
Okay.
So over to you.
Okay.
And I was going to say again, please do post your questions as Mark is speaking. Okay,
great. Okay, thank you very much, Ian. And I'm not too sure exactly who all's out there, but good morning, everybody. And it's nice to be with you. Okay, my name is Mark Septon. I'm currently a senior project manager with Northern Ireland Water. I've been with the company for about 34 years now, in probably various roles in water and wastewater, including operations. And I've been in my current job for 7 years. The current job sort of probably entails a varied range of wastewater infrastructure projects and programs, including sewer rehab, flooding, drainage area plans, storm separation, foul to storm misconnections, pumping stations, and even some first-time service provision from time to time. And I first became involved in sewer rehab in 2015. So in terms of sewer rehab, I'm a relative newbie. So I'll just dive in here and onto the first slide. Probably what I want to talk about today would be sort of a wee bit about the history of Northern Ireland Water, where we are, where we were, where we are now, and where we're sort of going in the next price control period. Before 1973, Northern Ireland was divided up into 26 local council regions, and each one was responsible for its own water and sewage services. They were all working to different standards, different working practices. They had their own operational risks, etc. And there wasn't really sort of too much joined up thinking or strategy amongst the various council areas. And all that had to change for the better. And in 1973, some legislation was passed, the Water and Sewage Services Order, NI 1973, and water service was created. Water service covered the whole of Northern Ireland, and it was divided up into 4 new divisions: north, south, east, and west. Which the borders of which, maybe I shouldn't mention the border just in present times, but the borders between the divisions broadly ran along some of the old council area boundaries. Water service was a government body, and for many years, up until 2007, it enjoyed a lot of Crown immunity from prosecution, for example, for pollution and environmental infractions. Again, there was a major change for us in 2007. The Water and Sewage Services NI Order 2006 was passed by our Legislative Assembly, and Northern Ireland Water Limited was formed. Northern Ireland Water Limited is an agency or a non-departmental government body, and it's a government-owned company, and it has one single shareholder, which is a Department for Infrastructure. And probably one of the biggest changes for us was that we came under a lot more regulation, environmental regulation, and also the utility regulator. The utility regulator in Northern Ireland is probably a bit different compared to other areas, in that it also covers electricity and gas as well as water. And so we lost our Crown immunity, and we found ourselves sort of open to the regulator for pollution incidents, etc. So that was a big change for us in 2007. Moving along then, I suppose common to all water and sewage companies, we've got an ageing networks, both in water and wastewater. Types of sewers: brick, clay, concrete, asbestos, cement, PVC, pitch fibre, the whole gambit. And we've undergone decades of chronic investment. We're largely publicly funded, so a lot of our money to run the company comes from government subsidy. And I suppose we're competing with funding from the likes of education, healthcare, transport, social welfare, and also security, and all the rest. So decades of underfunding has led to the age-old problems of sewers in poor condition, water mains in poor condition, bursting, etc. In terms of sewers, with lots of problems with the out of sewer flooding, internal flooding, etc., etc. All the usual stuff that sort of water companies would be used to working with. Talking about the funding, then, Northern Ireland Water has a very unique funding model. We're the only region in the UK where the water utility is not funded to the levels required by its independent regulator. In other words, the regulator sets the funding levels, but they're not always met, and that would be due to other public expenditure needs and constraints. We're probably the only publicly funded regulated utility in the UK. So one of the messages that we're driving home with in Northern Ireland is we're going drains and cranes we're sort of saying that unless we start properly investing in our fueling wastewater infrastructure, we'll have to make difficult choices about our economy and our natural environment. The funding model is broken and it's time to get it fixed. We've got failing wastewater infrastructure due to continued underinvestment. And I've heard other people in other water companies talking about the proverbial cliff edge in terms of sewer condition and capacity. In some places, we've actually fallen over the cliff, or on like the last scene of the Italian job, in some cases we're teetering very near the edge of the cliff and about to fall over. So one of the results of this, that we've got economic growth in Northern Ireland is becoming constrained, and there are over 100 cities and towns where we're saying that we can't actually allow new connections to the system because of undercapacity. And also there's the added effect of damaging our natural environment through increased sewer flooding and pollution. So I suppose the message is that there's lots to do in Northern Ireland. Despite that, thankfully, we've continued to successfully deliver a lot of private sector levels of performance and efficiency. So I'd like to take a wee look back at our last price control period, which is finishing in March. And we called it PC21, or sorry, PC15, price control 15, and it lasted for 6 years, from 2015 to 2021. We've got £990 million of constrained funding against a 1.7 billion requirement that we asked for, which was further constrained during the price control period. In other words, there were further cuts which affected the delivery of our price control targets and our outputs. In terms of sewage maintenance, flooding and UIDs, there was £90 million allocated to that programme and project stream. So sewage maintenance and flooding and UIDs, £90 million, and out of that there was a capital maintenance programme of £28 million, and out of that came a gravity sewers allocation of 18 million. So within the gravity sewers allocation, we had a target of renovating or replacing 11 kilometres of sewers per year, which represents about 0.07% of our network per year. We always aim to maximise trenchless solutions, mainly through the use of CIPP. On some of our programmes, we've been achieving sort of 90% plus use of CIPP liners and trenchless solutions. We've got probably some various work streams. We've got what we call our planned rehabilitation, which is based on risk assessment and prioritization. Our asset management folk, they take all of the sewers in Northern Ireland and they run them through a risk assessment model, and that basically produces a prioritised list of sewers that we carry out further assessment on and then do the rehab on. We have our unplanned programme, which is essentially sort of emergency or difficult sewers. For example, places where you might have restrictive access, you could be working in basements, and we've had to demolish and rebuild private garages. Places where there are complex engineering. For example, a few years ago on Boxing Day, one of our major pumping mains burst under a motorway embankment, and which caused a bit of an upset, and we had to go in very quickly and sort of get that fixed. So it's essentially work which our operational repair teams can't really deal with, and it might be passed across to us. We've got our incidental rehab, and that would be rehab which would have been done for drainage area plans to address infiltration, etc., and some SPG4s, SPG5s. We also have a polluted stormwater outflows programme, in other words, asphalt storm misconnections, and we have done some public realm work. Streetscape projects would be essentially sort of going in and doing inspections of the sewer network and carrying out badly needed repairs in places before expensive surfacing is laid down. Some other PC15 programs got wastewater pumping stations based maintenance, first time sewage services. We've got a critical infrastructure for water and wastewater, which looks at crossings under railways, major roads, etc. DG5s, internal flooding, UIDs, and unsatisfactory intermittent discharges for water quality. Storm separation, we have a CSO maintenance program, and there were some other sort of what we call sort of nominated projects. So as far as delivering the sewage projects were concerned, we don't actually do anything in-house. It's all outsourced, and with various construction and consultancy frameworks. For example, during PC15, we had IF19 and IF100, which were frameworks for construction. We've recently awarded our IF105 frameworks, which are frameworks for construction, and they'll be carrying through into PC21. We've got our integrated supply frameworks. Our integrated supply frameworks, they're frameworks for mechanical and electrical plant and equipment and materials. And the way that works is there's a requirement in our procurement with our supply chain partners to actually go to the integrated supply partners to buy things like blowers, mechanical electrical equipment, pumps, etc. So there are pumps frameworks. So essentially, these integrated supply frameworks more or less act like sort of nominated suppliers or nominated subcontractors for NI Water. We've got our IF10 and IF11 professional services frameworks for consultancy, which we used during PC15, and that's recently been replaced by IF180 prof services framework for consultancy. On the ops and repairs and maintenance side, we have a term contract for wastewater cleaning and maintenance, which includes CCTV cleaning, CAPP lining and repairs, and that's mainly used by our operations partners. Okay, so looking ahead then to PC21, which is another 6-year program which will last from 2021 to 2027. We don't know what our constrained funding is going to be, but we have a £1.5 billion requirement. It's worth saying that £1.5 billion requirement, it excludes 0.5 billion, which we're asking for the first phases of the Belfast strategic drainage infrastructure plan. So we had a team called the Living with Water program team, which was set up in 2015, and it was set up specifically to address flood risk in Belfast and water quality in Belfast Lough, so which includes shellfish waters. The aim of it is for there to be shared solutions between all the relevant stakeholders, for example, the roads agency, rivers agency, and it also looks at all of the drainage areas discharging into Belfast Lough, and it's something which is going to public consultation very soon. We could be further constrained during our period. We mightn't get all the money that we either ask for or even allocated by the regulator, and we don't know what we will get for our sewage maintenance programme. And the draft determination for PC21 is due this month, and the final determination will be made in 2021. So this month we should be getting a better feel for what we will be getting during PC21, and we'll go back to the regulator to basically sort of maybe possibly challenge the regulator on some of the requirements and the determination. So the final determination will be March 21. So as I said, we don't know how much we're getting for sewage maintenance, flooding and UIDs, and the capital maintenance programme will be X amount as well. Looking forward to what we are going to do. Our targets have yet to be set, and we don't know how much of our network that will be replaced per year. But again, we'll always be maximising intentional solutions, mainly in terms of CAPP. We have a planned rehab programme, again, down to the risk assessment and prioritization. We will again have our unplanned rehab programme for emergency or difficult schemes. We'll have a stormwater separation, our polluted stormwater outfalls programme dealing with foul to storm misconnections. We're also intending to have a pitch fibre programme, which will deal with pitch fibre rehab and replacement. I suppose like a lot of water and sewage companies will have the dreaded pitch fibre in our networks, which causes us all sorts of problems when it starts to go wrong. Thankfully in Northern Ireland at this stage we aren't responsible for sewage laterals the way a lot of the WASCs in the UK mainland would be. Public realm programme as well for the streetscape projects and surfacing, and then we're also going to do some rising mains rehab and replacement. So other PC21 programmes and some of our major projects, first time services, new connections. Wastewater pumping stations base maintenance. Again, we're going to have a program of critical infrastructure for crossings onto railways on major roads, etc. The critical infrastructure, that'll be mainly appraisal at this stage, and that'll mainly aim to identify critical crossings, assess the condition, and prioritise all those different needs and interventions. We've got our DG5's internal flooding program, and again we have our UID's program for our drainage area plans and water quality outputs. Also, there will be a storm separation program. Again, we hope to do some pilot projects within that. For example, a pilot project within schools, maybe a commercial area or maybe a residential area. And we've asked for some funding for that in our PC21 plan. And we also have our CSOs and event and duration monitoring program. And again, that's really prioritizing CSOs within the 2 kilometre of shellfish and bathing waters, and this is essentially to basically monitor discharges within those areas. A major project coming up which will involve a bit of tunnelling. We're applying for funding for a 2.2 kilometre of 2.2 metre diameter tunnel interceptor sewer. The route of it is the heavy dotted yellow line there. And it will connect to the existing Belfast Stormwater Tunnel, which is a pink line. Belfast Stormwater Tunnel was completed in 2010, and essentially it's a 3 large interceptor sewers which pick up a lot of storm overflow discharges. On that diagram there, the lighter dotted lines there feature storm overflow connections, so that this phase of it, the Belfast Stormwater Tunnel extension, will be an enabler for future work to collect, intercept future CSO discharges. Another one in the offing is the Strathfoil siphons project, about 0.5 kilometres of twin siphon pipes below the River Foyle up in the Londonderry. The existing siphons are steel pipes, and the drivers for the project are operational resilience, and also we're looking at future capacity needs for those whenever we go to replace them. Okay, just looking here at capital delivery for sewage. Going forward, it'll all be outsourced. We have our IF 100 capital delivery framework, which will continue. We also have our IF 105 capital delivery frameworks, which are our most recent construction frameworks. IF 105 is divided up into 3 lots. We've got lot 1, which is for infrastructure up to projects of about £1 million in value maximum. Lot 2 is for non-infrastructure projects and programs up to £1 million maximum value, and lot 3 is for infrastructure and non-infrastructure up to £10 million maximum. For projects over that value, we're looking at at this stage with our transition from the European Union, we would essentially maybe have to go to OSU competition for those. We're also considering maybe a framework for those larger projects as well, but that's still in those very early stages. Again, all of those lots within 105, they're all design and build, or they can be direct design and then followed by construction. The integrated supply frameworks again will continue for our mega plant materials, and then we will continue with our IF 180 professional services framework, recently awarded, which will continue until such times as that runs out, and then it'll probably be replaced. Again, our PC20 and ops repairs and maintenance will continue with the term contract for cleaning and maintenance. Again, that includes our CTC, TV, cleaning, CAPP, lining and repairs. So what's new and on its way in innovation? Sort of like a lot of water companies, we're on this journey of continuous improvement. One of the things we introduced during PC15, our last price control period, was an in-house modelling capability. Again, that's paid us huge dividends in getting better information, so we can go forward with evidence-based decisions regarding our future investments. We have updated our capital works procedures. Essentially, we've got procedures now which create the plans, deliver the plans, and then monitor the plans. We're divided up into two. The Asset Delivery Directorate, the directorate that I work in, is divided into two main sections. We have our asset management section and we have our integrated capital delivery section, and I work in the delivery section. Going forward, there's going to be more of a focus on value management. Essentially, that sort of means for us an earlier focus on challenging the need for capital expenditure. Includes things like more root cause analysis and triaging the needs and benefits. It'll be more evidence-based, and it'll decide whether a capital project is actually needed or whether increased maintenance is needed. In other words, it's thrown back to ops, or whether it could be a combination of both. So we also have our Capital Program Management Office, or CPMO, which is new to us. And so the CPO sort of, it does the monitoring for us, and we'll have the introduction of KPIs for the supply chain and time, cost, quality, safety, and environmental. And the KPIs are sort of more or less a stimulus to good management. In other words, if we go low on a KPI score with a supplier, then we can talk about it, discuss it, take steps to try and improve it. We've got cost management function, which tracks and monitors costs, and we also have a programming section within the CPMO. All of the supply chain will be working to Primavera P6 in future, so that we can basically sort of use Primavera to track and monitor our capital works delivery as we go forward. And again, a lot of reporting and data, and I suppose a lot of it's really about sort of getting better data so we can make better evidence-based decision making going forward. A wee bit about some of the things going on sewer rehab. We haven't been doing too much raising mains rehab. Generally speaking, up until now, it's all been done through open cut replacement. We will be doing some spray lining trials using Axalta on a section of main in the not too distant future. There's a slip lining trial which will be hopefully completed this weekend, weather permitting. We're also involved in the UK partner project on raising mains rehab with IKT, which is exciting. And we've also been involved in helping to draft the UK information and guidance note on water industry guidance on undertaking gravity sewer rehabilitation. So that's something, whenever it's approved, we'll be going forward within our asset standards and our engineering standards. And our pitch fibre sewer rehab, during PC15, we did a couple of trials of different lining systems using the N2 and Demco lining systems, both of which were very successful, and we hope to be doing as much trenchless rehab of pitch fibre sewers as possible. We've also been involved in the WRC project, safe and efficient management of pitch fibre pipes, and we're on the WRC project for CCTV inspection adapting to the digital age. Northern Ireland Water has, as far as digitization and artificial intelligence of sewer condition recognition, we haven't done any of that sort of thing at all, but we're on board with that project, and if we aren't going to be spearheading the development, we'll certainly be fast followers of the innovation. So very
Thanks,
quickly,
Mark. Are you able to wrap up now?
I've just finished.
Perfect.
Thank you very much.
Right, I've got a question for you, which is with reference to the 1.5 billion funding requirement.
Yes.
And that is, where does that 1.5 billion come from?
That 1.5 billion will be a combination of our public subsidy from the government, and it'll come from revenue that we generate ourselves through water charges.
So it's who's decided that that is the amount of money that you need?
Yes, well, we have had a PC21 program team who have pulled together the bid, and they have taken a look at all the various needs and all the various the PC21 team has basically sort of established, put that 1.5 million through various business cases and various assessments of networks, and there's been sort of various funding models and things put forward for that. We've been using things like IPAC to cost up the needs. So it's essentially a business plan based on what the current situation is, what the future needs are, and how much it's going to cost us.
Right. Well, thanks very much for that, Mark. I think you've obviously you've given us a tantalizing feel for what to look forward to in the determination, or the draft determination you're expecting this month, and for next month. Now, one final question for you has just popped up. As part of the CPMO function, are there any plans to conduct post-implementation reviews on completed projects or frameworks in pursuance of continuous improvement?
Yes, that's always part of the continuous improvement cycle, whereby we always analyse our and carry out post-project appraisals and post-benefits analysis.
Thanks very much. Right, we have a second refreshment break, your chance to catch up with your emails and get a cup of coffee. We start again at 11:30 with the final presentation from Severn Trent Water. So we look forward to seeing you again shortly.
Okay, thank you.
Pleasure. So, welcome back, everybody. We're going to continue now with the final presentation of this morning's session, and that is from Andrew Warren and Thomas White from Severn Trent Water. So, gentlemen, over to you.
Thanks very much. I'm just preparing to share my screen, so hopefully you should start to be able to see that fairly soon. In the meantime, thanks Ian, and thanks also to Lee and Alice for their help with their technology over the past few days, and apologies for my inadequacies on that front. Hopefully
I haven't got the slides yet. Just need to, I think, click on slide share.
Sorry, hopefully.
They'll be there in a moment. Always a slight issue.
Apologies.
If it's any help, if you haven't changed your slides, I can put your first slide up. You're obviously not. Did you get the screen share request from my colleagues?
Yeah, I did. I clicked on it. Sorry. Every time I click on share, it just says paused. It says showing screen. I don't know if that's showing anything.
Here you go. I think it's just arrived. Okay, over to you.
Apologies for that. Thanks very much, Ian. Yeah, just to briefly introduce myself. Morning, everybody. My name's Tom White, and I work in the Waste Networks section of our strategy and planning team at Severn Trent Water. The presentation I'm going to give today just gives a brief overview of our sewer rehab approach for AMP7, and then touches on some of the challenges that we face for the AMP. Okay, so first I'm going to talk about...
I'm Andy Warren, and I'm going to support Tom, but Tom's doing most of the presentation. I'm just here to kind of support him on that. So generally involved in roads and mains, and been doing a bit of work on sewer rehab and lining.
Sorry, Andy. Okay, so cracking on. First, structure of our rehab programme in AMP7. So broadly speaking, we've got 3 elements of our sewer rehab. First, we've got our reactive repairs, which still account for the majority of rehab that we deliver, and also they tend to come from an asset failure that we've become aware of due to a call into the business. So most of these will be delivered off the back of a collapse or a defect that's led to a blockage, which in turn has led to a flooding or a pollution incident. And our county operations team work closely with our contractors on these kind of standard repairs. However, some of these repairs that come in are non-standard, and we class them as either complex, urgent or emergency. And these tend to be due to factors like the pipe having a large diameter, being deep in the ground, having a high flow rate, or a high chance of impacting the environment, or in particular ground conditions. And these kind of repairs and rehab we deliver through our capital delivery team. Second, we have our proactive survey, cleanse and repair activities. These tend to have ODI drivers, and in general consist of us going to hotspot areas where we've had lots of historic incidents, CCTV surveying pipes, cleansing those with poor condition grade, and then conducting repairs and rehab on those with poor structural grade. And then finally, we have another element of our proactive approach, which is then delivered by our capital delivery team. And this in AMP7 will be split between our traditional standalone projects and particular locations where we've identified an operational risk. And in AMP7, we'll also, in addition to these, have some block work that we're carrying out, which are addressing specific elements of business-wide risks that we've identified. And then just the final thing just to say on this slide is we're expecting the total length of rehab that we deliver in AMP7 to be broadly similar to what we delivered in AMP6. So the graph at the top on the right shows our historic rehab lengths that we've delivered for AMP6 on the left in terms of the annual rates, and then AMP7 on the right, with grey line showing our gravity sewer rehab and the purple line showing our rising main rehab. We've delivered a lot more on rehab, on gravity sewers in absolute terms, but we continue to invest very heavily in rising main rehab and replacement in terms when we consider the kind of the total length of rising mains that we have in our region. Okay, so as I mentioned on the previous slide, reactive repairs still account for the majority of the rehab expenditure that we have and the rehab length that we deliver. But of course, there are many reasons for us to aim to reduce the number of repairs that we perform reactively. First, if we're responding reactively, then our assets have failed and sewage is likely to have escaped, impacting our customers and environment, and likely to be clear-up costs, not to mention potential fines or ODI penalties. So if we can move to a more proactive system of asset management, we'll reduce the number of failures and repairs, have a better control of our assets, and a better understanding of our overall asset health. So I'm sure our aim is similar to many other companies in that we want to kind of continue along that pathway to becoming more proactive as we journey through AMP7. Okay, so this slide gives a high-level overview of one of the key approaches towards becoming more proactive on sewer rehab. So over the past couple of AMPs, we've developed what we call our Proactive Works programme, and this has been really instrumental to us delivering improved sewer flooding performance over recent years. So in AMP6, we more than halved the number of sewer flooding incidents that customers in our area had experienced. The general approach we've got is to use historic ODI performance to guide where we conduct CCTV surveys and then perform cleanses and repairs off the back of the survey findings that we have. And the rationale for this approach is that if we can do it at a sufficient level, then it will reduce the number of reactive jobs that we have. So that was the initial idea for the programme in its infancy. In AMP7, we're developing things to be more focused. So we've now got numerous proactive programmes, and each of them's got a separate ODI focus. Each has got a bespoke method of hotspot identification and ranking, and each has an individually set out scope of the actual work that we conduct to enable us to get the best performance return on our investments. We run these programmes on an annual basis so that we can flex them to meet performance needs that have arisen in the previous year. We also monitor them very closely throughout the year in terms of their delivery, and then review them extensively at the end of the year to ensure that we can work out why particular variants of the approach have worked best in certain situations, and then we can incorporate those learnings into future years' programmes, and that will be key to the development of this process through AMP7. And then this slide shows another aspect of our proactive approach towards sewer rehab. So, as mentioned, in AMP7, our capital programme will be split between block work targeting specific elements of risk that can impact the whole network, and then location-specific design and build schemes, kind of standalone rehab schemes that we've delivered traditionally. And we've identified three important areas which have a business need that we simply must meet, and we've developed work streams for these areas in terms of blocks that we're going to be blocks of work that we'll be delivering. So first, we have what we call our supercritical asset work stream, which has the objective of ensuring that we don't have a collapse on any of our most critical sewers. So these are our 0.1% top ranking sewers in terms of their weighted consequence. So we have a model which weights various aspects of consequence and enables us to rank every pipe in our network. And these tend to be very large sewers running through urban areas. So they tend to be old and difficult to access. So if we were to have a collapse in one of these sewers, then it would likely lead to flooding of thousands of properties, have a really detrimental impact on lots of businesses, and probably cause a very severe pollution incident. So we've estimated that the cost of one of these collapses to us in terms of clear up costs, repairs and fines would likely exceed £100 million. So we obviously need to ensure that we don't have any of these type incidents. So what we did in AMP6 is we had some survey programs which enabled us to get some better condition information on our trunk sewers and our sewers near railways. And in AMP7, what we'll be doing is we'll be using that information and further survey and non-destructive testing information on these sewers to guide where we perform repairs on these types of sewers. Also, when we do gain access to these sewers, a lot of them are difficult to access, as I mentioned, and so we'll be installing monitors in these sewers when we do get in there, so that we can continue to gain information on them after we've left them. Second work stream that we've got for AMP6 in terms of our blocks is focusing on wastewater pipe bridges. So in AMP6, we identified these assets as one in which we had an opportunity to improve our data, our knowledge of their condition, our understanding of their condition, and also our management in general. So what we did in AMP6 is we conducted lots of inspections to enable us to confirm the locations and condition of our wastewater pipe bridges. And since then, we've initiated a network-wide inspection and maintenance program with the inspection frequency set according to the conditions of the pipe bridges that we found in those inspections. We're also delivering repairs on those pipe bridges that we deem most necessary to repair in terms of that's also driven by the bridge condition indexes that we have been collating when we perform the inspections. And the final block that we've got for AMP7 is focusing on infiltration. So this includes both investigation elements and rehab elements. And the primary driver for this one is persistent dry weather flow non-compliance at sewage treatment works in our region. So 4 works that we identify as high risk in this domain. We do extensive investigations of the upstream catchment, and we're able to ascertain the extent to which infiltration is causing the dry weather flow compliance issues at the works. And then off the back of that, we can then perform repairs to remedy these issues if infiltration is deemed to be a large determinant of the dry weather flow compliance issues that we've got. And then finally, as I mentioned, we have our traditional 5-stage schemes, which involve design and construction elements to tackle operational risks that we've identified, but we aren't able to address adequately through our operations team or the complex work, predominantly due to the scale of these. Okay. Something else that we're expanding in AMP7 is our sewer sensor approach. So we'll have much wider coverage by the end of the AMP, and that hopefully will really help our rehab activities. So our strategy of attempting to prevent the event has the aim of using live monitor data to reduce reactive repairs and to also reduce the kind of the blanket cleansing approaches that we've used over the past couple of AMPs, and to replace these with more targeted cleansing and also with more proactive site attendance visits. So in short, we're switching from using lagged measures of sewer performance to leading measures. And this flowchart shows the kind of factors that we'll be aiming to measure and also aiming to influence with the goal of reducing the overall flood and blockage risk on our sewerage network. Okay, we just thought that we should put this slide in to enable us to tell you a little bit about our rising main approach in AMP7. So in short, we've developed and embedded a number of proactive processes in AMP6, and we'll be continuing and expanding them in AMP7. So we're continuing to walk our rising mains, to digitise their locations, but also digitise the locations of air valves on them more accurately and more comprehensively, and then also replacing air valves that need replacing. We'll also be using pressure monitoring and its management at a larger scale to ensure that we can identify pressure issues before they lead to asset failures. And when rising main failures do occur, when bursts occur, we're taking pipe samples, sending them for analysis so we can understand the mode of failure better. Final thing to mention on this slide is ice pigging is definitely part of our plan, but it still remains pretty much in its infancy for us. So although we've conducted some trials, we're still working out where and when it's most feasible and most worthwhile, so that we can use it in a cost-effective manner. Okay, so the final few slides covered some of the challenges that we've identified in relation to sewer rehab in AMP7, and it'd be really great to discuss the experiences that other people have had on these issues, either in the questions after the slides, or of course feel free to contact Andy or myself or any other Severn Trent colleague that you know that works on rehab afterwards, and we'll be very happy to discuss any of these things with you. Okay, so I think the first challenge we've got is that we continue to manage our assets with an incomplete understanding of where they are and also their condition. So we've identified a number of asset classes where our knowledge has room for improvement, and successfully improved our pipe bridge knowledge last AMP, and we're able to build on that improved knowledge this AMP for pipe bridges. But there are other asset classes where we do lag behind. We think for siphons we're probably about an AMP behind in terms of this process, but we're hoping to use our pipe bridge experiences to help us develop our understanding of our pipe bridge assets through AMP7. Another challenge we've got is ensuring that our risk prioritization methods are good at balancing kind of comprehensive risk that we have on our networks, but they're also specific enough to be useful in terms of investment purposes. So this slide shows a little bit about our infiltration rehab work stream. So for example, as I mentioned, at the moment our infiltration rehab comes primarily from dry weather flow non-compliance, but we also collect lots of other information on the network which suggests that infiltration is impacting the network at other locations. So it's a big challenge to ensure that our risk prioritization methods effectively quantify different elements of risk that could be worthwhile considering, and they're also flexible to us adding in new elements of risk after we've kind of set them up. So that's a challenge that we face. Something else which continues to cause us issues is hydrogen sulfide. So both in terms of the impact on our sewers and also issues relating to chemical dosing. So we feel that we could definitely improve in terms of our process weighing up what constitutes an acceptable level of risk in terms of H2S. So it's probably true that some pipe deterioration has to be expected, and we can't expect to dose everywhere due to the cost. So we'd be really interested in hearing about how we can improve our site selection processes for chemical dosing and for making the management of H2S more effective more generally. We thought we'd put in a brief slide about COVID-19 as well, and here's a brief summary of how it's affected Severn Trent Water's rehab activities. As for many others, lockdown led to some initial problems mobilising our workforce, but after the initial delays, we made a decision to restart our preventative works. But we continue to have to closely monitor our year one expenditure. We're considering phasing some projects due to budgetary restrictions that we face due to losses of revenue in relation to COVID-19. And of course, there is the overall uncertainty of what the future holds, which definitely makes long-term and medium-term planning more difficult. A few other challenges that we thought we'd mention, we've grouped together on this slide. So first of all, we're really interested to hear about alternative cleansing methods that may be available. So for example, for some asset classes, traditional jetting is ineffective. So things like siphons, it's not an effective way of cleansing our pipes. Also interested in hearing and trying out sewer flushes on our network and other ways of controlling the flow, particularly in areas where we've got flat sewers that have got low flow rates. Similarly, in relation to cleansing, we feel that we have room for improvement in terms of our processes to clear silt. So current processes can lead to fragmentation of pipes and removal of pipes, which is not ideal. So we'd be interested in hearing of ways that we can improve our removal of silt. And then last but not least, we're, as with many other people, very interested to hear about methods that we can test our liners that we install, both in terms of testing at the time of installation, but also the testing the kind of the degradation of their structural integrity through time. Okay, so they're the areas that we thought we'd discuss with you today. But again, thanks again to Ian and the organisers for giving us the time to talk to you, and we'll be more than happy to answer questions to the best of our knowledge.
Right. Thanks very much. I've got a slightly long one here, and it concerns COVID-19. And let's see if you guys are able to answer it. So Severn Trent Water will no doubt be aware of increasing concerns that have been raised recently regarding cross-contamination of COVID-19 and other infectious diseases, which currently at least present a lower risk in terms of fatality or serious long-term consequences. The risk of transmission of these microorganisms. Bear with me 1 second. I've moved too far down the screen as I was trying to read it out. Right. So apologies, everybody. I've just got to get the screen back. Right, so the risk of transmission of these microorganisms has been recognized and verified for some time, but only recently has the focus turned towards operations undertaken daily by those conducting seemingly essential work on behalf of the UK water industries. So operations like water jetting and the use of small jetting systems within confined spaces, or larger recycling jetting machines that expel vast plumes of potentially contaminated water vapor into the wider atmosphere. The contamination, as you're aware, is far from just an airborne risk, and the residual contamination will remain infectious for some hours, or maybe even days on harder absorbent surfaces. While unquestionably the demand remains for the removal of blockages and the alleviation of sedimentation to avoid flooding or river and water contamination as a result of unnecessary CSOs discharges, the requirements for other alternative solutions must now be greater than ever. I'd like to ask what efforts are being made to proactively evaluate remedial solutions which perform these tasks remotely without the risks referred to above, so safe working below ground in a contaminated drainage system. Are you able to make any comment on that one? The questioner did actually pose this for one of the previous speakers as well.
I think I think our operational guys have been briefed on how to do that. I think we've not been briefed how they do that. So yeah, I'm not entirely sure, to be quite honest, and I'm assuming you're probably the same, Tom. So I think, yeah, we've obviously got hygiene practices. We've reduced some of the workload we're doing, still doing the planned cleansing, but yeah, still attending blockages. But I think the awareness of COVID is very high, and hygiene practices have improved a lot. But inevitably, we will have to do spraying to clear blockages. So yeah, I think that's about all I can say really on that.
Okay, next question. Tom, as you stated, the investigation of supercritical sewers is extremely difficult. What percentage of surveys attempted have been successfully inspected, and have you deployed any specialist techniques to achieve this?
Again, if you want me to answer that one, I think, yeah, we've used, so for the trunk sewers, we've used some submersible kind of floating cameras down the trunk sewers, the large diameter ones. We did some in Leicester, got an 8-foot sewer down there. So, and I think that's about kind of like 10 meters, 12 meters deep. So, so we have used things like that. We do inevitably get quite a few where we get the zero headers. So basically we attempt to survey, but we can't get in. We basically give it to the contractors to do the enabling works to try and get to site. If they can't do it, then they report it back, and then we have to go and do more of a detailed site visit, and we might have to do some civil work to enable the survey of that. And some of them we probably won't do because of the cost of the survey. So yeah, we attempt as many as we can, but we do that through our contractors. Yeah.
Okay, now the next question concerns infiltration and how you assess it. So the question is, yourselves and other speakers today have mentioned tackling infiltration issues as a priority. So what mechanism do you use to grade these when there is no direct structural or service condition grades available from a CCTV inspection for infiltration?
Again, I think it's quite a complicated one. So there is, I think there was an UCWER study done in 2012 on infiltration, and basically CCTV doesn't generally get coded very well for infiltration. So you get kind of fractures identified, and you get other defects identified, but infiltration, although there is a code for it on the SEC, it's not always very well used. So we basically, where we've got infiltration hotspots where it's been flagged through the Q80 or the Q90 dry weather flow exceedance at the works, we'll then investigate that catchment, and where we've got some of those, we'll review that CCTV and make a kind of a decision based on that. So we won't use the XML coding, we'll actually review the video and then assign it either a SEPA, a runner, a gusher, as per that UCWER 2012 guidance.
Okay, and the next one concerns with a similar length of rehab planned for AMP6 and AMP7, and the majority of your rehab being reactive, how are you looking to address your asset health ODIs?
So the asset health ODIs, are we talking about blockages there?
I presume that's what it is.
Yeah, so we are over the course of the kind of years 3 to 5 of AMP6, we really ramped up the amount of proactive work that we've done, and I think we're expecting that we will be continuing to do that. So I think the idea is that by spending more on our proactive work, that we'll reduce the number of blockages that we encounter. So I think, yeah, I think that's our approach.
Okay. Next question is, has Severn Trent considered the advantages of using flushing technologies to vary flow levels and velocities to reduce sedimentation and alleviate hydrogen sulfide problems as an alternative to dosing?
Yeah, so we obviously do dosing, where kind of the retention times at the sewage wet well or in the rising main and the discharge, that's where we tend to get most of our problems. So yeah, we did look at flushers on gravity systems where we're getting sedimentation. We've not really looked into those flushing systems for H2S as yet. So generally the retention time, it's either in the well or the rising main. So even if you make your pump cycles more regular, the retention time will still be the same because it will just be retained in the pump station or the rising main. So we've not really looked into that enough yet. So, but yeah, definitely be pleased to hear from anyone who's got some better experience in that.
Right, and I think we've got time for one or possibly two more questions. The next one is, what techniques are you using or considering for mapping underground sewer assets?
Yeah, the first one is obviously using ops knowledge. So we kind of know where the bursts have happened, so we can kind of map rising mains based on that. So obviously it gives you a bit of confidence knowing where it's burst before, but there's still lots of uncertainties. We have used drone surveys, either doing it in the winter when you get kind of different daytime, nighttime, and we can kind of do the heat detection using thermals to find the rising main. We've also done kind of some soil moisture using drones to find where they go as well. That's been less successful than the heat one, but being done at night. So we used Sahara surveys. So we had one where we weren't sure where the rising main went. We thought it went up in the Peak District through some peaks, actually went under the river, so and followed the river. So we've done some Sahara there. So yeah, so I think we try and use a cost-based approach really, and then obviously we'll use more traditional methods such as ground penetrating radar as well. So so they're the main methods we use, and we kind of use the cheapest one first. If it doesn't work, then we go to the next level. It also depends on the consequence. If it's a rising main that's had loads of issues, then we'll kind of be more willing to invest in it. So yeah.
Okay, thanks for that. There are a few more questions, but we'll have to pose those to you separately concerning pipe bridges, use of ice pigging, and issues you might have experienced with siphons. But I'd like to thank you both for the presentation you've just given. And I will now make a few concluding remarks to finish the session that we have today. So we hope you've enjoyed the morning, and we have tomorrow to look forward to. It's a pity that we couldn't have driven under Anglian Water's or over Anglian Water's rehab sites on our route into the Peterborough Arena this week. And of course, we're not able to meet tonight for the annual UKSTT Awards dinner, a highlight of the no-dig year. For those who are attending tomorrow, we do have a couple of changes to the programme, which you will be, for those who've signed up to attend, will also receive an email about this afternoon. With 10 water and sewerage companies lined up, there was always a possibility that one or two people might have to drop out for unforeseen circumstances. So James Devereux, United Utilities, tomorrow morning, taken on a new role, and found out at very short notice that he can no longer present and there is not a replacement speaker available. So for the 11:45 slot tomorrow, which was United Utilities, what we're going to do is I will bring forward my summing up remarks and comments on today's presentations and do that slot then. So we will then, that will be followed by a break, and we will continue as planned with Wessex Water and Yorkshire Water straight afterwards. Also, in the last 15 minutes, we have heard that the Scottish Water speaker is now no longer available tomorrow morning. And again, a replacement cannot be provided at short notice. So it means we will start tomorrow's event later than planned at 10:15 with Thames Water. So look out for an email with those changes to the programme if you are planning to attend tomorrow. It just remains for me to say a couple of thank yous to all the speakers for their excellent contributions today. And I'd also like to thank Alice Nolan and Lee Abbott at Westrade, who've been working behind the scenes massively over the last week or two to get this organised and to run the event today. And also thank to Lynn McLaughlin and Dawn Gregg at UKSTT for their support. A reminder that the unanswered questions will be, answered and will be shared, and that the PDFs will be made available next week for what you have heard. So thank you everybody for attending this morning, and we look forward to seeing you again tomorrow.